Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we dig into complex research and pull out the key insights you need.
Glad to be diving in.
Today, we're looking at something really critical, but maybe overlooked. It's this intersection between environmental crises and gender inequality.
Yeah, it's a huge fault line. And look, this isn't just about saving the planet in an abstract way. It's about survival, especially for women in the Asia-Pacific region.
Right.
We're exploring how things like water scarcity, bad soil, pollution, they get massively amplified by these structural inequalities. Honestly, you could argue we can't fix the climate crisis without fixing the gender crisis first.
And we found a statistic, didn't we, that really just nails the urgency here.
Oh, yeah. The one about agriculture.
If women globally just had the same access to resources as men, things like land, credit, support services,
Basic stuff, really.
food production could shoot up by, what was it, 2.5 to 4%?
Which sounds technical, maybe, but think about what that means. The sources suggest that increase alone could lift 150 million people out of hunger globally.
150 million. That's staggering.
And when you consider that something like 60% of the world's chronically hungry are right there in Asia and the Pacific, well, tackling gender inequality stops looking like a nice to have.
It looks like maybe the most direct route to food security we've got.
Exactly.
So that's our mission today. We want to explore first some of the sociological ideas about why we even frame these things as crises in the first place.
In how maybe we get that framing wrong sometimes.
Yeah, and then connect that theory to the really practical life and death stuff around food, energy, and water access, specifically through that gender lens.
Okay, so let's dig into some of the theory first, because it actually feeds right into today's policy stuff, surprisingly.
The groundwork.
Yeah. Like when we talk about, say, global warming,
Yeah.
well, we assume everyone just knows it's a crisis, right?
Seems obvious, yeah.
But environmental sociology, it has this long-running debate. It's called the realist-constructionist conflict.
Ah, yes. I thought that was really interesting because that constructionist side, people get it wrong sometimes, don't they?
They really do.
It's not like they're saying, oh, the sea isn't rising or something.
Exactly. No one's denying the physical reality, the hazard.
It's more about, okay, why this issue? Why do we panic about, I don't know, nuclear power leaks, but maybe ignore something like pollution inside people's homes, which seems pretty hazardous too.
Precisely. The constructionists ask, what are the social, the political, the cultural processes that make society label certain conditions an unacceptable crisis?
One that demands action, demands funding.
Right. While other conditions, maybe impacting different groups, stay sort of invisible, off the agenda.
Okay, but doesn't that create a tension? If we're busy debating the construction of the crisis, do we risk, fiddling while Rome burns, delaying action on actual rising sea levels?
That's the classic critique, and it's a fair point. The sources suggest that the field is really trying for synthesis now.
So acknowledging both things.
Yes. Acknowledge the objective reality climate change is happening, but also analyze the socially constructed nature of our response, or sometimes our lack of response.
Why we respond in certain ways and not others.
Exactly. Why do we pour billions into, say, massive dams, but maybe neglect simpler household-level fixes that might actually help more people? The theory helps us unpack that power dynamic.
And to really get at the roots of how society thinks about nature, we need to look even further back, right? Beyond just recent sociology, like Karl Marx.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Early environmental sociology kind of dismissed the classical thinkers. But work like John Bellamy Foster's points out, Marx was deeply concerned with ecological issues.
He wasn't just about factories and capital.
Not at all. He looked hard at the soil fertility crisis in his day, and he came up with this concept, the metabolic rift.
The metabolic rift, great phrase. It describes how capitalism kind of breaks the connection, the natural exchange between humans and the earth.
That's it. Industrialization pulls people and food off the land into cities. The nutrients in the food, taken from the soil, end up as waste in the cities instead of going back to fertilize the land.
Leading to exhausted soil.
Systematically. And get this, Marx and Engels, they were actually reading agricultural chemists like Liebig, and they actively promoted recycling city sewage, human waste, back onto farmland.
Wow. Early proponents of closing the loop.
Seriously. Which is worlds away from that mid-20th century sociological view. the human exemptionalism paradigm, or HEP.
Right, the idea that humans are special, we're so inventive, we're exempt from nature's rules, we can just engineer our way out of anything.
That idea still feels pretty dominant sometimes, doesn't it? But then you had the counter-argument emerge, the new ecological paradigm, NEP.
Saying, hold on, we rely on these ecosystems, we're embedded in them.
A much more realistic view, we'd think. Then there's also Ulrich Beck's risk society idea.
Yes. Risk isn't just accidental anymore, it's baked into modernization itself. Systemic risk.
Right. But Beck's theory gets criticized, too, for being a bit inconsistent.
How so?
Well, critics say he argues both that risks, like nuclear threats or genetic modification, are objectively real and increasing,
Right.
and that risk is fundamentally a social construction, that it only really exists when we perceive it and define it as such.
Yeah, I can see the tension. If it's only a construction, why are we spending billions trying to stop it?
Exactly. The bit of a conceptual tangle.
Okay, interesting. So let's take these theoretical threads, especially that constructionist idea about who defines a crisis, and see how they apply to, well, the real measurable risks people face daily.
Perfect transition. Because this conflict between what gets defined as a crisis versus what is lived as a crisis really shows up in this concept of time poverty.
Time poverty, explain that a bit.
It's a huge structural bias, often invisible in economic models. The data from developing economies is stark. Women spend, on average, something like 4 hours and 30 minutes every day on unpaid care work.
4.5 hours. And men?
About 1 hour and 2 minutes.
That's more than 3 hours difference. Every single day.
And a huge chunk of that female time isn't leisure. It's spent on tasks directly tied to the environment. Fetching water, gathering firewood, foraging for food or animal fodder. It is resource management.
But it's unpaid, unrecognized.
And it directly hits productivity and well-being. Let's look at agriculture in the Asia-Pacific. You've got 58% of economically active women working in agriculture. Huge number.
The backbone of the rural economy, often.
Absolutely. Yet less than 20% of them hold secure tenure over the land they farm.
Less than 1 in 5. Why?
Structural barriers,
Yeah.
access to credit, irrigation, training programs. It's all skewed. Plus, deep-seated sociocultural norms often see men as the farmers, while women doing the actual work are just helpers.
Even if they're doing most of the labor.
Right. And the result? Lower productivity on the land women manage, which feeds directly into food insecurity.
Bringing us right back to that potential 150 million people who could be lifted out of hunger if that bias was removed. It's not just social injustice, it's actively damaging the food system.
Precisely. And it gets even starker when you look at specific resources. Take water.
Okay.
Overwhelmingly, women and girls are responsible for household water supply and management. We see figures from parts of Asia. Girls and boys walking on average 6 kilometers a day, just fetching water.
6 kilometers daily. Think about what else they could be doing at that time. School, for instance.
Exactly. It's a massive time burden, hitting education hard. And beyond the time, there's the issue of safety and dignity. The lack of safe private water sources or sanitation facilities. It's a source of shame, fear, increased health risk, even violence for women and girls.
It's a daily vulnerability.
Then layer on energy. Over 2 billion people in the region still rely on solid fuels for cooking. Wood, charcoal, dung, agricultural waste.
If they have to gather, usually women again.
Usually. And the consequence inside the home. Household air pollution. This is shocking. It's ranked as the second most important health risk factor globally for women and girls.
Second only to what? Malnutrition, high blood pressure.
It's right up there with the major killers. And get this, 60% of all premature deaths attributed to household air pollution worldwide are women and children.
60%. That's an epidemic hidden in plain sight. In people's kitchens.
It absolutely is. The smoke from cooking fires. It's a massive physical risk, obviously. But the lack of access to cleaner cook stoves or fuels, that's a structural risk, rooted in who controls resources, whose needs are prioritized in policy.
And this loops back perfectly to that constructionist idea, doesn't it?
Yes. Why do we see industrial air pollution as a global emergency, requiring international treaties and carbon taxes?
Which it is.
Which it absolutely is. But why is the equally deadly air pollution inside millions of homes, mainly affecting women and children, often treated as sort of secondary issue, something for small NGOs to handle?
It's about whose problem gets defined as the real crisis. Who has the power to frame it?
Exactly. Which brings us neatly to thinking about power dynamics in resource conflicts, but also where solutions might be emerging.
Right. Let's talk about conflicts first. Water is always a flashpoint. especially the politics around privatization.
Huge issue. There's often this deliberate shift in language, a discursive move, as the academics call it. Water goes from being framed as a basic human right, a public good,
To being framed as a tradable commodity, something to be bought and sold for profit.
and the results can be drastically different depending on the path taken. Look at Bogota, Colombia. They actually rejected World Bank pressure to privatize their water system back in the 90s.
What did they do instead?
They focused on reforming and strengthening their public water company. And the results were amazing. Access jumped from about 78% to 95% in under 10 years.
Wow. So public management worked, and worked well.
In that case, yes. But then you have the cautionary tale, the one everyone cites, Cochabamba, Bolivia.
Yeah, the water wars.
Exactly. Rapid privatization, prices shot up, massive civil unrest, riots. It became a symbol of how badly privatization can go wrong. It hammered home that water access isn't just about pipes and rainfall.
It's fundamentally about political economy. Who controls it, who benefits.
Absolutely. Now, shifting from overt conflict to adaptation, we see fascinating things happening on the ground in response to environmental stress, like in coastal Bangladesh.
What's happening there?
Okay, so you have seasonal floods, cyclones. These push saltwater further inland, increasing soil salinity, which means crop yields plummet.
A classic climate change impact. So people just leave.
Not necessarily permanently. What the research shows is more nuanced. Seasonal mobility. During the stormy, low-yield season, many men moved temporarily to cities for work construction, maybe pulling rickshaws.
And then?
Then, during the dry season, when conditions are different, they might return home for other activities, like salt production, which becomes viable then.
So it's not just climate refugees in a simple sense. It's complex, adaptive labor strategies.
Very much so, moving beyond those easy stereotypes. But, okay, adaptation is one thing. What about real transformation? Where do we see women not just coping, but actively driving change, often through technology and entrepreneurship?
This feels like where the positive potential really lies.
I think so. This is where we see that emergent leadership idea taking root. Take an example from Cambodia, the introduction of an improved cook stove called the Niang Congre.
Okay, a better stove. How did it help?
Developed by an organization called GER, it wasn't just slightly better. It cut firewood use by 50%. Huge environmental saving.
Less deforestation, less time collecting wood.
Yes. And crucially for the women using it, particularly those who smoke fish to sell, it cut the smoking time by an hour and a half per batch.
Wow, that's significant time saved.
And because the process was better, the quality of the smoked fish improved. They could sell it at a 20% higher price.
So it hit multiple targets. Less environmental impact, better health due to less smoke, saved women enormous amounts of time.
And generated more income. It directly tackled that time poverty we talked about, turning a burden into an economic opportunity.
That's a powerful example.
There are others too. Like in India, organizations such as Swayam Shikshan Prayog are empowering village women to become clean energy entrepreneurs.
What are they selling?
Improved cook stoves, solar lamps, water filters, household solutions. And it's not just about the income, though that's vital.
What else happens?
These women gain status, respect within their families and communities. They become visible economic actors, leaders.
So these local networks, often women-led, are kind of filling the gaps.
Yeah.
Where maybe bigger institutions haven't delivered.
That's often exactly what's happening. They're developing and delivering solutions that are culturally appropriate, affordable, and actually meet local needs because they come from the community itself.
And presumably they're drawing on that deep local knowledge women often possess about their environment.
Absolutely. Who knows better where the reliable water source is, or which type of wood burns most efficiently, or how soil conditions are changing year to year? That knowledge is key to effective resource management, but it's so often ignored by top-down approaches.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Pull the main threads together from our deep dive today.
Sounds good.
For me, there are two really big takeaways. First, that sociological lesson. We have to be really critical about how problems get defined as crises. Who's doing the defining? Whose problems get prioritized?
That constructionist insight is vital.
And second, flowing from that, we absolutely have to address the gender dimension of environmental stress head on. Because ignoring it, letting those structural biases persist, it's actively damaging our ability to manage food, water, and energy securely for everyone.
Completely agree. And the policy implication there is clear. It's not enough to just tick a box and say, women participated in a meeting.
Right. Need to go beyond participation.
We need systemic recognition. Recognition of women's existing knowledge, their leadership potential, their actual daily roles in managing resources. Because the evidence we discussed shows that when you do recognize and empower that role,
You get better results.
you get better resource efficiency, better conservation outcomes. It's proven.
Okay, so that leaves us with a final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on. There's this sociological idea of emergence.
What happens when the old rules fail?
Exactly. When traditional institutions, the usual guidelines, just aren't working anymore, which happens a lot in these complex environmental crises. People get stranded in this kind of twilight zone of uncertainty.
A bit lost, looking for direction.
Yeah. So given the scale and speed of the environmental challenges we face, and given the examples we saw today of women's networks creating effective bottom-up solutions where maybe governments or big NGOs have struggled, should we perhaps start viewing these local, often women-led initiatives not just as stopgaps, but as the necessary emergent organizations, the groups that actually need to step up and lead because the old structures are proving inadequate?
Are they the key to navigating that twilight zone?
Maybe. Something to think about, the power, the potential, and the necessity of that local, often female leadership as we face these huge global challenges. We'll leave you with that thought.